Hi, this is Anthony Tort here, and I just want to share with you my story. If you're checking out our website or you're looking at bringing me on your radio station, having me consult you, or just finding out what it is that we do and why we do it, I won't spend a long period. I can certainly expand on my story, but I'll just briefly tell you that I grew up in a Jewish Catholic household in a prosperous community on the East Coast in Margate, New Jersey. And when I was 10 years old, my father passed away suddenly, and it dramatically changed my life. I went on like a normal youth, playing baseball, football, wrestling, and just doing things that normally do. When I was about 16 years old, I began to find myself in trouble, so to speak, started getting involved with, an illicit lifestyle, drugs, but in the environment that I was in, I was still relatively, quote, normal. And I really didn't have any spiritual influence, so to speak. I had some great role models. My mom was the most beautiful person in the world. Grandfather, probably one of the most godly men that I've been connected to. My aunt, my uncle, great family around me. But I never personally had any connection spiritually, and so it's just kind of, I guess I was just wandering, so to speak. And, when I was in high school, a friend of mine invited me to his mom's Bible study. And she told a story about the Prodigal Son. Most of you are familiar with that story, and if not, just look it up in the Bible. I mean, basically, it's a story about someone who had sort of blown their inheritance with their father, had gone off into wild living, and then came to a hard place in their life where they desired to come back to the father, come back to the family. And so that story stuck with me until about my second year in college. My third year in college, went off into an exchange program to California, which can be a wild place for someone like myself. And I got further into that lifestyle, further into drugs, and, came to a broken place. I was broken personally, internally. I was doing more drugs than I ever had, and I just internally came to a broken place. And, on the outside, it was, I was fine. I was playing football. I had good grades. I was staying in shape. So, you wouldn't think that I would come to this place. For whatever reason, we all at a certain point may come to that place. And I just remember that story about the prodigal son. And I'll make a long story short, but I called out to God for help. Okay, so I had remembered that I was told that there was a loving God and that I could come back to him and then get his help. Basically, I had come to a place in my life where I needed help. And I wanted a much more prosperous life. I had always been entrepreneurial minded. I pictured having my own business one day and, of course, great family and all those sort of things. But I was hitting a point where I just knew I needed help in life. And so I called out to God, and he began to answer. That's the best thing I can tell you. Now, my story, isn't necessarily a religious story, but it's my story. And so it's affected every area of my life. This isn't a matter of what religion you are or something like that. This is just my story about how I called out to God and then what happened next. These aren't facts that are debatable or something like that. This is just something that happened to me, and it was extremely powerful. He began to move, from my estimation, in ways that only an external force could do. Things began to happen, and I won't tell you every little detail, but I'm leading to why I formed this company and why I do what I do. So he began to move things around. One day, two good-looking, blonde-haired surfer guys show up at my door to rent the apartment that I was in. And so amazingly, he had began to move the wrong people out of my life and the right people into my life. So needless to say, I'll jump forward and say that I became a Christian during that period. And I began to read the Bible, and I was inspired by God, helped by God. And quite honestly, I just have no other way to explain it other than I felt the love of the God that I had heard about. That's simply what happened to me. And for some reason, that love, that security, that power enabled me to stop doing drugs, to stop living an illicit lifestyle, and to begin to be completely in awe and start reading the Bible. This was not something I felt I should do, could do. I just simply wanted to do it. Every time I read it, I got some amazing inspiration out of it. Well, I began to learn that the Bible had something to say about every area of life. So I began to pattern my life after the Bible. Now, I can't say to you that since then I've not made any mistakes, I've had the perfect life. It's not been that way. But I've had some guiding truths that have helped me, and I believe that can help a lot of other people. In one area specifically, I read in Proverbs, I think it's 11:22 or 27, chapter 27, somewhere around there, that it said the borrower is servant to the lender. Now, that was a concrete truth that I began to see work out in my life because, you see, I had seen my family lose their wealth in the 1987 stock market crash, correction, whatever you want to call it. But I learned some truths between my life experiences and what I had read in the Bible. And I later learned that my family, which came from great wealth, had invested in the stock market. They did what's called borrowing on margin. So basically, it's debt, and it's a huge risk because if the market corrects, you got to pay that money back. Well, long story short, we went from living in a beautiful Bayside house, in a wealthy community, to then living in a basement. And this happened so quickly, so abruptly. Now, obviously, it took time for that to happen and so forth, but from my vantage point, 1 minute we were living in that house on the bay, beautiful, very expensive home, a great lifestyle, to living in a basement. And I began to see the connection between what I'd learned or what I was learning about what the Bible said. And so basically that inspired me to form what I call the LifeWorks company. And what I do is I base it on my life experiences, some great current modern resources, and obviously with some biblical truths, which makes what I do ancient from the standpoint of this has been taught for thousands of years, that the borrower is servant to the lender. And I have seen the power of that in my life. And so I have been debt-free, and I've been in major debt where I needed the resources that I'm currently going to provide to people in this area. So that's kind of a nutshell of my story. I'll expand this later, tell you more about it, where I think you can learn something powerful from it. But that's basically what motivates me. The LifeWorks company is now formed and actually offering, services and products that take these experiences, take these truths to help people not only go from debt to prosperity, but to have prosperity in every area of their lives. And so hope you benefited from this. You'll be hearing a lot more from me, hopefully, because we will connect and we will help you go from debt to prosperity. Thanks. This has been Anthony Tort.